PSD EdTech Coaches Podcast, Season 2, Episode 9. Are we ready to roll or not? Welcome to the PSD EdTech Coaches Podcast, a podcast for educators by educators that love to equip teachers, ponder, and discuss current issues and climate in education. With your hosts, Dan Hauptman and Steve Stucky. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Thank you for joining us. I'm here, Steve Stucky, with my co-host, Dan Hauptman.
How is it going, everyone? I hope you guys are having a great morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are. I can't even believe I'm about to say this. We are a little bit short of 1 year from being sent home on quarantine. That to me is just astounding that we've been out for almost a year.
It seems like almost a year since we've actually done a podcast.
It does. Even though it's only been a couple months, it still feels like it's forever. I know that there's talk now about going back, and I know we've alluded to it over the last few podcasts, but I don't think it's actually been concrete that it's imminent now.
Well, as you know, the vaccines have started, and that should start loosening things up, I guess, for everybody.
Yeah, and I mean, what was it? March 1st was the date for teachers to start, and now it's just a waiting game to see what happens, whatever decisions might get made.
Yeah, you think back to March 13th, isn't that when we shut it down last year?
Yeah.
It seems like about 10 years ago. Sitting in the house.
Yeah, and a long time sitting in the house, probably the most I've ever spent in one place in a very long time. But I know with the thought of us going back, I know the first inclination when teachers go back is to revert to what they did before COVID. But I just want to implore all of you that when you do go back, please don't revert to the way it was.
Hold on. What do you mean, don't revert? I mean, I get to go back and be with kids. I want to revert to that.
Reverting to that is okay. That part is okay. But, look forward. Look for the positives in what you did remotely and what you tried and was successful with, and use that in the classroom. Remember, everything that you've done so far that's been successful remotely can absolutely be used face-to-face with your kids. And I have a feeling there'll still be a little bit of remote somewhere in what we do when we do come back. But keep that push forward. I know we've used the saying before, 1 step forward, 2 steps back. But just remember that the move forward back into the classroom is a step forward. Don't allow those 2 steps back to where we were before COVID. Look at what didn't work during distance learning and try it again face-to-face. Sometimes being face-to-face is all you needed to make that one thing work. Maybe to help out that kid click that button that you tried to describe to him. But what you found to be difficult in distance learning might just be what you need when you return face-to-face.
Well, when you're thinking about that, I'm hoping that you didn't try something once and give up on it. Because I truly believe that as a trainer in EdTech, that the tools we've shared are not just for remote learning, that they are great tools that can be highly successful in an in-person situation and can probably take what you do completely farther than you've ever done before.
It's very true. And, again, to me, I know we're missing that face-to-face, and I think a lot of people think that it's a different pedagogy than when we were, distance learning versus being face-to-face. And I know it's slightly different. But edge protocols, something you can still do. Flipgrid, still something you can do. Keep pushing forward.
I was looking through old video files. I had some old VHSs in my office, and I found one where I was being interviewed on local news. And I had made the comment, and this blew me away because this is back in the early 90s. I mean, like 1990 probably. Could have been 89. Where I had mentioned that I'm always looking for ways to improve. And Dan, you know that and you've seen me over the years that, especially during state testing, when I'm bored out of my mind, is that I have a little booklet out and I start writing down things that were successful, that were not successful, and things that I would like to try in the next school year. Sometimes I got to them, sometimes I didn't. But the idea is that I had this reflection time. And, anybody listening here, any teachers listening, I hope that you have found a few moments during all this difficult time teaching to reflect on your pedagogy. Have you tried some new things that were successful? And if you have, and they were successful, keep them. Use them when we come back. Use them if we're hybrid. Use them however you want. If you ask that, if my old ways were not successful, because a lot of times people tried to replicate what they were doing in the classroom, you need to change those, right? Because they didn't work. And they might not have been working in the classroom either. And I get it. A lot of people were just, at a moment's notice, pushed online, and they tried to emulate what they actually did in the classroom. From whiteboards on until they realized I can use digital whiteboards, smart notebook, you name it. What you did in the classroom doesn't always translate effectively into distance learning models, but I think that there's a lot of what is being done, as Dan, you alluded to. You got Flipgrid, you've got EduProtocols and everything. They can translate into successful, highly successful in-class teaching and learning once we're back.
And I think also it kind of opens the door for looking to the future. We've seen over the last year now that teachers have been, they've been more creative than they've been able to in a very, very long time. And we saw the idea of a Bitmoji classroom come into fruition. All of a sudden just became the most popular thing. These are all teacher created things. And the fact that we know that teachers can be that creative and be effective with their students while doing it, I think really will allow some of those old ways that are no longer successful, the things that teachers have been complaining about for a long time, saying, it was successful in the past, why isn't it now? I think will help push that forward for their class and for their own pedagogy.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. I think teachers need to step back and keep on trying these things once we get back, for sure. And if you haven't started trying things yet in your classroom with remote or distance learning and teaching, take some time now. I mean, if by chance, and probably will be so, you will be testing your kids, and that's going to be a huge drain on everybody. It would be a great time to try some of these fun things that are super highly engaging and different, where kids can show what they know.
And very flexible too, because you can bring curriculum into it very easily. We've said this many times during our trainings, whenever we talk about anything that we do, start off with something fun to get the kids engaged in what it is, and then push forward and add in the content. If you can take away that, the crutch of needing to know the protocol or needing to know Flipgrid, the program, or, those types of things. If you can just add in the curriculum after they know the programs, it just makes it that much more fruitful, because now they only need to worry about the curriculum.
Yeah, I totally agree. Never just hop in. And I know the temptation is I need my kids doing content. They need to be showing what they know. But when you start off with something new and you want to throw content on top of it, it becomes a mess for everybody. Because as a teacher, you're still learning it at first too. The kids definitely are. Do something where the effective filters are way low and that it's fun and it's engaging. And then be sneaky, sneak in the content once they've mastered whatever you are doing with EdTech, whether it's Flipgrid, whether it's a Google Slides, whether it's Google Drawings, you name it. You need to teach it in a way that is not threatening for the kids, and you need to understand that it's not necessarily going to be highly effective the first couple times out. but once they get the hang of it, they will be experts, and the content that they share will be awesome.
Yeah, it's the way I look at it as well is doing something fun with it first allows not only the kids to get used to the protocol, but or whatever the program is. Doesn't have. I know I always go back to Edu protocols, but whatever you're trying to use as the medium for the content. Not only will it help the kids get used to it, but it'll help yourself get used to how everything is supposed to work. If it is an edu protocol, what is the back and forth between the teacher and the students? When it's Flipgrid, what happens when I send it to them? Making it more engaging and fun that way, so that way you learn it, makes it a lot easier for you in the long run once you start doing the edu protocol or the Flipgrid or whatever it is, benchmark universe. So that way you can be more effective with it as a teacher and not just as the students engaging with it.
I think using part of your PLC time with your fellow teachers to practice those skills amongst each other and share those ideas and bounce them off would be greatly, immensely helpful for any teacher trying to do something for the first time with students. Get a feel of what it's like with your grade level. And hopefully your PLC is in a place where you can trust each other, that you can communicate those things, and you can help teach each other. That is part of a growth mindset, right? Teachers at this time all over the world, it's not unique to our school district or our state. It's every state and every country. Teachers have had to dig deep. They've definitely had to have learned new things this past year. They had to have practiced a growth mindset. But a lot of people are still struggling to make any kind of changes. You bring up a program and the anxiety just pushes them down. They haven't developed a growth mindset to where it's okay to try things and fail and try it again and try it again. But isn't it true that you want to demonstrate a growth mindset to your students?
Well, for me, developing that growth mindset for the students helps develop student agency, which just pushes your classroom in a different atmosphere as how your students look at learning.
Yeah, autopilot.
Yeah, it really does. And I think about some of the classes that you and I have taught over the years where we had students who really grasped the idea of student agency and how, you see them now, 10, 15 years later, and they are just blossoming because they knew that they had to grab onto their own learning and they had to grow. I just got reached out by a former student from Mesquite that is now, she's going to get her doctorate and she's going to be a doctor. And I looked back at the way she was when she was in fifth grade.
She couldn't have done it without a fifth grade teacher.
That's right. And it was actually funny because she mentioned both of us and she actually mentioned you, me, and
aren't we allowed to say her name on this podcast?
Yeah, I can. It was Andres Evans. Andres was just a sweetheart growing up, but she always knew that learning was number one. It was something that her parents instilled in her, and she grasped that, and she just pushed it forward. She always went above and beyond, and now, she's going to be Dr. Andres, which to me is just weird because I still think of her as a fifth grader. But
she wasn't afraid. She was not afraid to push herself and to try things.
Very true. I mean, she joined Science Olympiad and she because the way you and I always run Science Olympiad, it was always, here's the project. We are here to help, but you guys are driving everything. And she was one of those that just grabbed it and ran.
Didn't she become a cabin leader for us at outdoor science school one time too?
Yeah, she did. She became a cabin leader at Malibu, and and I think she was like 17 or 18 by that point. And so, yeah, I mean, she's, you look at her now and you think, wow, you lose touch of your students over the years, and all of a sudden they pop back into your life, and you're like, how much have they grown? Not just in inches, but just in their way that they carry themselves and the way. It's all because of that student agency. It really is, especially when you look at it at the way that they talk about being in school. When you hear her talk about being in her college and learning, she doesn't talk about it as I can't believe I'm going back to college. I've got another class tomorrow. It's, hey, I'm graduating in 2 weeks. I can't wait. And it's because she's that excited over learning and that accomplishment. I think that's something we need to really instill in our kids, and that's that student agency, that growth mindset.
But that starts with the teacher, and the teacher has got to give up that fear of change. People in general, not just teachers, hate change. The unknown scares you know what out of them. And for those people who aren't afraid to take those steps forward, to try new things, you see that they're the ones being highly successful, fully loving what they do. With EdTech, you mentioned earlier in this podcast this idea that people become really creative again. You're seeing the creativity come back in what teachers are doing. Well, when I think back to my early years of teaching, it was all creativity. We were out there, and we were, I at least had principals that were willing to, throw the reins over and say, go for it, just don't embarrass me, kind of idea, which was really freeing to be creative and try new things. Whereas there was a time where it seemed to be, follow this curriculum. And all of a sudden, it was just drudgery. And then EdTech hit. And I still remember that first Q conference that you and I went to.
Yeah.
We were like kids in a candy store because we've been into the tech. And as I've looked back at old pictures, I've been involved in tech quite a bit. I can't believe how many videos and pictures are of me with computers and kids, even before it was a thing at school. They were there, but it wasn't like it is today. And so we were kids in a candy store, and we saw all the things, the way the technology could help, not only help kids, but it put the creativity back in my lap. And I was like, yeah, I love this. Because deep down, I think I'm a creator.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I can still remember day 2, you and I sitting down like around lunchtime and just going, holy moly. I mean, we were just so overwhelmed with all the stuff and the ideas and the stuff we could do and the stuff that kids can create. I can still remember walking down they had the student showcase, and the kids are, fourth graders are coming over and saying, hey, you want to see what website I made? And we're sitting there looking at each other like, you've got to be kidding me. And technology has really opened the world up, and it's really opened up a different part of the creativity that I think has been missing in education over the last few years. I know when I started off, I'm in my 16th year now, and
16th, young.
I know. It's only a little bit of what you've done, but when I got in, it was, I can still remember the first day and going through. Okay, here's day 1, here's day 2, here's day 3 of where you're supposed to be in all your different programs. And I look back at that now going, how robotic that can be. And you and I tried really hard to be creative with that type of a constraint in what we did. And we did a fairly good job, I think, considering where we were and what we were doing. I know you and I were talking about just a few years ago, the fact that we did like a reader's theater with our students, where the students got to actually interview the characters, and we were the characters of the book Tuck Everlasting. Those types of things to really make it more creative for the students. The ed tech part, to me now, allows even more, because now instead of the teacher having to be the one who's kind of fighting that creativity, the students now, which to me is the most important part, the students have to be the creative ones. And I know they'll all say, well, I'm not that creative. I don't know how to draw. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do that. Until you get it in their hands, and all of a sudden you get to see how they blossom.
Well, teachers too have to be willing to let that happen. And once they realize that it really is going to take a whole lot less planning, a whole lot less trees cut down for all of the dittos and worksheets that you normally have printed up and have spent probably millions in a school district, especially one our size, in copying paper, rather than having the kids create and using part of that digitally or with video, audio, you name it. You can have so many different ways that kids can share what they know, You just need to turn on your creativity and run with it. It may not work all the time. It may not work the first or second time, but you'll all get the hang of it. You'll have a new tool in your tool belt to be able to use so that kids can grow.
So let's say that you and I were back in the classroom and we're being told, hey, all right, we're coming back tomorrow. You'll have kids tomorrow in front of you. For whatever this new normal is going to look like. I know we're still waiting to find that part out. But on day one, and what would you prioritize for day one? I'm going to use EdTech as sort of the scope and sequence of that question.
Because I was going to say hand sanitizer, wipes, plastic shields.
But that's all true. I mean, the plastic shields hopefully will be all set up for us when we walked in. But what are some of the things as a teacher that they need to worry about on day one that they might, with EdTech at least, that they should prioritize when they walk in the classroom?
Well, I think a huge advantage, actually, and it's not tech related, is the opportunity to actually see your students face to face and to be able to start making a connection as real people. Because I don't think people online start really thinking about each other as real people. I know that I've walked into schools, even during this COVID time, to help out a teacher or deliver something to a teacher, how excited they got just to see a real person. And I say it's not like the kids aren't real online, but they're not really there.
But it's funny you say that because a teacher over at Tumbleweed went and visited their students over Christmas break, and they were dropping off presents house to house in their class. And he said, it was amazing to me how short a lot of the kids were. Because, you see them up on the screen and you think, oh, they must be a little bit, they must be this tall. And he said, and then when they saw them face to face, it was like, oh, they're really short. I guess it was sort of like when you go to see your favorite movie star who's up on the 30-foot screen, and then you meet him and they're only like 5'4". I thought that was a hilarious point of view on that completely.
Yeah, camera angles are everything.
Oh, they really are.
Yeah, I remember running into Steven Tyler of Aerosmith at a Macworld conference in San Francisco a while back, and I looked as my buddy was tapping my shoulder, and I looked, and then I had to put my head down. I was like, oh my gosh, he is not tall at all.
No, not at all. So getting to see the kids, what else?
Well, I think there has to be a part where we start building those relationships. Now, I'm going to say, at least for the kids in the upper grades, they're probably pretty technologically proficient using a lot of the programs now. So here's a great opportunity to start building that class cohesiveness, doing some SEL with the kids, setting up your, capturing kids' hearts and your all of this. You can use things like Flipgrid, Google Slides to get to know each other. Start running some protocols. Those edgy protocols, I'm telling you, are hot. You learn one thing, and all you have to do is change the content. Your planning time goes down to just about nothing.
It's so true.
But in the content, I think about, you and I have both taught 8 parts. So those of you who don't know, go to eduprotocols.com. But we've taught the 8 parts protocol, and I love the logic. In the past, it was always, well, we teach nouns one week, we teach verbs the next week, we teach adjectives the third week. By the time we get to the 4th week, they don't remember what a noun was. But with the protocol, 8 parts, you're teaching all 8 parts of speech every day or a few times a week, all at once. And so you've practiced all 8 parts all the time for 8 weeks. And the kids get it because there's a repetition. And I think the only thing that you change in that whole 8 parts is a picture.
It just makes it so difficult, doesn't it? I got to find a picture. No, but
but they're given to you. There's resources on eduprotocols.com to find those pictures. You don't have.
That's so true.
It's brainless on our part as a teacher once you learn the protocol.
Yeah, and the kids love it. It really is engaging. Another thing that I would recommend on that day one, you talk about setting up the routines, because things are going to be different as far as Chromebooks. We don't know if they're going to be able to bring them back. We don't know if they're going to be bringing them back and forth. Set up set up the protocol for your students on how they bring them in, how they're used on the desk, how they're put away, or how they're taken home. And I go back to the hand sanitizer and probably using that often.
I would also then warn against the idea. Let's just imagine that we have full sets of technology for every kid at site and every day. Imagine that's happening is that, you know what, they probably do need a little bit of a break from that. You don't need to do everything via the Chromebook. If we go hybrid, though, you can actually start flipping your classroom and have the kids coming in better prepared, having listened to your lessons ahead of time. Big idea there, I think. I think that could really make hybrid run.
Yeah, and talking about a growth mindset, because now you have to think future. You're not thinking behind. And, both you and I have said over the years, in the 5-6 years we've been coaches, paper will always have its place. This may be its place right now. The kids have been on Chromebooks now since last March, 1 year, with no other teacher interaction but through the little lens that's on the Chromebook.
Well, that's if their camera's on. You assume that they're there.
That's true. And that goes for the teachers as well. Making sure that using that paper, maybe they just need the stimulation of being able to write out sentences. Maybe they need to go back to that a little bit and get some of their tactile feeling back with a pencil. So paper will have its place. Don't think that you need to go 100% paperless, because even in the regular world, as crazy as it is, paper still has its place. Start thinking about ways that you can engage your kids off screen as well. I know, again, not knowing what recesses are going to look like, not knowing what lunches are going to look like. Try to find ways that the kids can connect with each other without the screen, I think is going to be huge.
Yeah, I've seen school lunches for the last 34 years, and guess what? They haven't changed much.
They haven't changed much.
Oh, you mean the actual physical going to lunch?
Yeah, going to lunch. Yeah, with each other. I know in Georgia, the way that they have theirs structured, and I think I might have mentioned this on one of the podcasts, is that each of the kids in the classrooms are in pods. And so that pod, they go to lunch together, they play a recess together, they learn together. And so that way, if something happens to that group gets quarantined. But it's a great way, though, with those kids being, podded together, for them really to start depending on each other a little bit differently than we may have had in the past in the classroom. So, and like I said, not knowing what it's going to look like when we come back. I mean, who knows? There are so many different variables and possibilities. And I mean, this is going to be the probably one of the hardest games of chess that our cabinet has ever had to play, and all the different moving pieces that they're going to have to place.
Let's imagine that it does happen this year. Okay. Yeah. And you know what? Don't stress about it, teachers.
No.
Use it as an opportunity, especially at the end of the year, to make, lemonade out of the lemon of 2020, 2021. Go in there and do something cool. Do something cool. Make those connections with those kids.
I think because they will always remember the year that they were on Chromebooks. Make it to where they not only do they remember the year on Chromebooks, but who their teachers were.
Well, yeah, they don't ever remember the Chromebook. They do remember you.
Exactly. That will go away. It's going to be what did you do to reach out to them? I don't know. There's so many different things to talk about when we talk about coming back.
Because teachers are exasperated for being online. They're going to be exasperated when they go back. We got to find a way to move beyond that. Frustration and anxiety that's happening during class time online. And, really, though, those troubles sort of just took a new form, didn't they?
They did.
The kid who didn't listen in class and do his work in class turns their camera off and doesn't participate online. I mean, so, really, it's happened out there. The kid who knows how to play school, they're playing school just fine online. Yeah. And they'll do just fine in your classroom. So you got to find ways to really hit those kids who are struggling, not motivated. Your motivated kids who, like I say, know how to play school, they're going to do fine, period. We got to figure out how to get those other kids totally moving along.
Worry about what's in our control and not worrying about what isn't in our control. I know that's a lot of the stress because all of this is all out of our control, and it's been out of our control for a year.
One of the things that people are stressing about is the key 2 words: learning loss. Should we focus on learning loss, Dan?
My feeling on that is if I'm a 5th grade teacher, I'm gonna teach 5th grade content, and if that means that I've got a 5th grader who may have lost out on some of their 4th grade year or their early 5th grade year, all I can worry about is now. For me, if I can fill in holes while I'm pushing forward, then I'll do that. But for me, I live in the present. Those kids are going to have holes for a very long time, and it's just going to have to be a way that we fill in those holes as we move forward. But if we start looking back, those kids are going to get slowed down, and they're never going to be able to be pushed forward.
Yeah, the only ones I'm probably really concerned about are those kindergarten kids who've never been in school. That's this year. We have a group of kindergarten kids who have not been socializing with other children physically in a classroom, and they're going to go to 1st grade. And there will be some losses in what the kids probably have learned, and 1st grade might be a little bit of a struggle next year.
Oh, yeah. But they'll be technologically sound because they've been on Chromebooks or they've been on iPads. But,
Yeah, don't just shove an iPad in their hand to keep them occupied. Don't do that.
No, not anymore. I think that teachers can help get that going. If I were a lower grade teacher, the first thing I would do with kids coming back is I would start reading to those kids daily, if not more than just once a day. I would read to them out loud often. Because I have this sneaky suspicion that their parents they've got a lot on their plate right now between making sure their kids are making their distance learning classes. They're probably working themselves trying to get food on the plate. By the time it's time for bedtime, they're just more worried about brushing teeth, pajamas, and bed. As a teacher, I want to get those kids listening to someone reading often, and get some more and get reading practice in. If I'm a lower grade teacher, that would be a bulk of my day, picking out new books, having people come in and read to my kids.
Yeah, I was just going to say, find some volunteers to come in and do this a lot. Yeah. So you can work with a small group. Another group can be being read to, and start hitting that up because that is important.
Oh, yeah, it's hugely important. And I understand. I know that I've heard a lot of teachers, I can't believe that parents aren't reading to them. You got to understand, they've got so much, It was hard enough to get them to read before COVID, but now that they also have to worry about school on top of that, for them to have to worry about, an extra thing on top of that, we need to, the only way that they're going to get caught up is if we take the bull by the horns and really make it intentional.
And I do know we're talking about largely the younger kids, but as you move up in the grades too, you want them reading as well. And so you maybe find new ways that you throw away that old reading log, okay, that really pushes people to lie. Really, come on, let's think about it. Yeah, my kid read 20 minutes today.
You mean like the Magic Mountain challenge that we always gave over Christmas vacation?
Yeah, my kid read. Here you go, you got it.
400 hours of reading.
Really start testing them. I do like the Bukakucha Edu Protocol, where it doesn't matter what they're reading on that day. They put down the page numbers that they are on, and they respond to it. And it does so. It doesn't have to be a class novel. It can be you read whatever you want. But I'm going to hold you accountable on certain days to respond about what you know and what you learn. It might be talk about characters. It could be a talk about settings or the plot. However you want to address it using that Edu protocol.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of holding kids accountable. It's a quick book report, 3 slides, and they're done. They're only required 1 sentence a slide. It's the accountability, and regardless of grade level, we got to get these kids reading, and it needs to be away from Epic. I like Epic; it has its place, but these kids need books in their hands. They need to get practice. They get that practice of reading again.
I absolutely agree. Reading, number 1, and they need to enjoy it. It does not need to become drudgery.
That's so true. And I know we can sit here and we can, for the next hour, talk about all the things that we might do on the first day of school back. And these are just a few things that to think about as you go back. Really, what are you going to set up in your classroom? Think of it again as another first day of school, because that's exactly what this is going to be. These kids have been out of practice in the classroom for a year, and they're going to think of it as coming back from Christmas vacation, and you always had to go over your rules and your social contract again. That's kind of what it's going to be like. They're going to have to be re-taught how to be in school.
Yeah, I don't know how much content the first couple weeks that I would actually worry about.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's if we come back before summer.
Very true.
If we don't come back before summer, because that's the other, one. I said, well, what if we do come back? And here's the situation. But if we don't come back until after summer, teachers, go get some rest, really, and start doing that reflection that I talked about. What worked, keep it. What didn't work, get rid of it. What did not work in your classroom physically before? Change it. Do something else. Substitute something else in. Keep on moving forward, growth mindset. Don't give up.
Completely agree. And teachers, when they're put in a corner, there's no one that fights harder than teachers. And so, the next corner we're going to be put into is coming back. So be ready for that. We've got a couple weeks until we have spring break. Have a good, nice, relaxing spring break. And whatever happens after spring break, do your best. That's all anybody's ever asked of you.
So if you've made it this far into the podcast, I've lost track of how much time we've actually been talking. Learn more about us at palmdalesd.org/edtech. You can find resources that might be helpful to you. We've talked about EduProtocols today. We talked about Flipgrid today. Check all of those things out. Start learning and practicing them now if you haven't, because they can be highly useful, greatly useful to you in your classroom when we do come back.
Keep an eye out for Tech Tuesdays. Those are going to continue on. I know that from this podcast forward, we have another one at the end of March that Steve and I are going to be doing on EduProtocols. So,
how could that be?
I know. It's almost like it was planned. But, reach out. We would love to talk to you guys about all of this, because you're not alone. We're here to help support you.
Right. And if, again, you would like to be a guest, you got something to say, you want something to share, this is what we do. I believe that the smartest person in the room is the room. And if hundreds of you listen to this podcast, there's a lot of smart rooms, or this room is really smart, and we'd like to hear from you. So you can go back to that website, palmdalesd.org/edtech. About halfway down the page, there is a place for you to say, yeah, I want to be a guest on your show, and tell us a little bit about you and what you want to talk about.
And if you ever have any ideas and you don't necessarily want to be a guest, let us know. We would love to know what ideas you have, what you want to hear us talk about, because these podcasts are about the teachers.
And I guess that's about all we've got for it today then, Dan. Stay safe.
Have fun. Relax when spring break hits, and we'll see you guys really, really soon.
I got to put our new theme music in on our outro music, don't I? Now we'll keep a little bit of the old because it was good, but we added something new because it was good too. Just like you should do in your classroom.
That's right.
Hey, what if I told you I never clicked record on this?
I would say that was a really good recording, and I don't know if I can do it again.
Well, there we go.
Okay.
Goodbye, folks.
Have a good day.